Today I'm joined by Nino Bonaccorsi. He was an NCAA national champion for Pitt. He was a three-time ACC champion. He was a 2021 NCAA finalist and a U23 World Team member. Nino Bonaccorsi, I appreciate you hopping on the call, man.
Thanks for having me, brother. I'm excited to talk some wrestling.
Of course, of course. Let's get right into it. So where'd you start wrestling and who kind of got you into it?
So I grew up in Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. So it's southwest of Pittsburgh, like 20 minutes. Started wrestling since I've been like 4 years old. My dad got me into wrestling. He wrestled throughout his life. He wrestled in college a little bit, and then obviously I have an older brother, Nick, and he wrestled his whole life, and he went on to wrestle at University of Pittsburgh. Um, and I got a lot of cousins and stuff that wrestle. So I kind of grew up in a wrestling family. So I've been on the mats in the wrestling room for as long as I can remember. Um, so then, yeah. So I don't really remember a time where I wasn't wrestling. Even when I was like, a baby, they'd take me to my brother's wrestling matches and stuff. So I'm always in a wrestling gym. But yeah, wrestled in Bethel Park. Went to high school in Bethel Park High School, and then I was fortunate enough I went to the University of Pittsburgh and wrestled there. And yeah, it's been a long journey.
Heck yeah. Talk to me a little bit about that family tradition because I know
Mhm.
both your grandpa and your dad both won Powerade, and then you obviously won it as well in high school. So talk to me a little bit about
Yeah,
that tradition.
yeah, dude. So it's definitely a deep. We all have a deep love for wrestling, and it was something that um, you know, I feel like when I was young, I had a lot of success when I was younger, but I could have never imagined like where it would take me and kind of the places I'd go and the people I'd meet. So I think, when you have success when you're younger, you start to think like, hey, maybe this is something I could be pretty good at.
Yeah.
And, along with being, like not to brag, but like along with being like technically a good wrestler and I was successful when I was younger, we just loved it like as a family. Like it was something that when we would take trips, like those were like our vacations. Like when we would go to like Wildwood Doles or like, these McDonough Doles when we're kids, like that was like our vacation. Like we didn't go to Disney World. We didn't go to like all like to the beach or anything. Like all our money we had, like we would spend it on wrestling. And it wasn't like like pulling my arm, like we're gonna go wrestle this weekend. It was something where we're like when's our next tournament? So it was something we just all grew to love. And like you said, our family, um, my dad and my brother, like we had a lot of success. And like you said, like Powerade when we won that. I think you might have said my grandpa. It was my brother, and my dad that won. But
Oh,
yeah, no,
you
no, no,
have that. I thought I saw
yeah,
in the saw some like a pit like story thing on you. I swear they
yeah,
said grandpa and your dad. Maybe I'm
yeah.
wrong.
No,
Messed
I
it up.
don't. But no, but like you said, like it was. I think more than anything about like winning and going. It was just we had a really good like strong love for it, and obviously it brought us a lot of joy and a lot of stories we could tell. So uh, I could honestly look back at my childhood and be like, this wasn't something that I was like, oh, wrestling kind of sucked growing up. Like it was just fun, and I think as a whole, it brought us closer as a family. Because I mean, I'm sure you know that like there's no other sport like wrestling, and going through those hard times and losing and just like obviously going to practice and working your tail off, like that stuff brings you close. And my dad was me and my brother's coach growing up. So like obviously we got really close with that. And then my mom, she was like as involved as any mother can be. So going through all that stuff together as a family, it just brought us really close. And it just like, now that we're out of wrestling, we could look back and we're like, man, that was such a fun time. And, I would do anything to go back and do it again.
Yeah, no, I like that 100%. Would
Mhm.
I guess my question is, being from like such a good wrestling family like that, did you ever feel any pressure that like, man, my dad was really good or my brother was really good, so I have to be really good as well?
It's a good question. A little bit, like I definitely, I feel like looking back, it came from more of a mindset of like I don't want to disappoint them in a way because we spent so much time doing this and um even in high school my brother would come down from college and wrestle me, and then even when I was in college he would come from work. He was working at the time. He'd come off a double shift and wrestle with me, and then obviously all the trips my dad took and all the money they spent. So I think looking back there was a little bit of like, not that I have like a level to like match, like, oh, I have to win this because they did. It was more just like I want to be the best I can and I want to have success because they deserve it, because they've done a lot for me and they've sacrificed a lot of time and energy and money for me. So I think to answer your question, it wasn't more of like a status I had to live up to. It was more of like a I want to make them proud and I don't want to, you know, disappoint them in a way. If that makes sense.
No, I get that 100%.
Yeah.
Pitt always your top school? I know obviously living 20, 30 minutes or 20, 30 miles away, obviously not too far from campus. Was that always your number one?
Man, yeah, it kind of was. I knew for like a long time I wanted to wrestle a Pitt. I even in high school, I would go down to the college practices and I would wrestle with them, and I was involved in like the club, the Pittsburgh Wrestling Club. Um, And then I got to know the coaches really well because, like I said, my brother was there, and obviously my dad had some ties to Pitt. So it just was like it already felt like a home. It was like a second home. I'd go down there all the time. I'd go to all the matches. I'd go to like the football games and stuff. So I kind of knew I always wanted to go there. And also like I'm a homebody. So like I said, we got really close with my family. So we're not I got really close. We've always been close. But we were always close, and I just couldn't see myself being like far away from them. I'm a homebody, so I knew I wanted to stay close to home, have them and close friends and everyone come to the matches. So yeah, so when it was time to decide, I was kind of, I definitely looked like around a little bit, like I would, be involved in some talks, but I think I always knew I wanted to go to Pitt, so I committed like kind of early, but yeah, I didn't really think too much about going anywhere else.
So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but you committed during the time where they were switching the head coaches, correct? Where you didn't know
Yeah.
who your next head coach was going to be for a while. Obviously,
Yep.
that ended up being Keith Gavin. Talk to me about the relationship you guys had.
Yeah, man. Me and Keith's the man. And, I thought, yeah, you're right. So when I committed, obviously there was a lot of coaching changes going on. And, you know, at the time it was tough because I got to know the previous coaching staff. And I was, really close with them. So I was kind of disappointed in a way, and I was, kind of frustrated. But, I Pitt's obviously a good school and they have good staff and admin. So I figured they're probably going to get someone just as good. They're going to get someone that's going to, be a good leader. And it was announced that Keith was the head coach, and Keith was also one of the guys I watched growing up, Pitt alumni. And he was involved a little bit with my club coach growing up, Sonny Abe. So, and then I think my brother in college, when Keith was training for, worlds and stuff, like my brother would go in and wrestle with him a little bit, get his butt kicked, but it was still like he was wrestling with Keith Gavin. So we obviously knew him and we knew he was great. So I was very excited when he was announced. And then um, it's funny because like when Keith was starting his journey as a head coach, I was starting my journey as a college wrestler, and he was the last national champ. So I think like in a way we had a lot in common. Like he wanted to have success with his team, and I wanted to have success in college. So we kind of learned like the college, like we kind of learned as we grew. Like he was learning how to coach and lead a team, be a head coach, and I was learning the ropes of college. So it was kind of fun to do that together. And um, yeah, me and him just got very close, man. And I'm very fortunate that, he was a part of my journey, and, he helped me immensely. And even to this day, we got a great relationship. So, yeah, I really like, and I was also fortunate, when I won, um, he was obviously the last national champ at Pitt, and then it was me. So to be his first national champ, um, felt like a good honor, and I felt like it really ended like our journey together at Pitt in a good and on a high note. So yeah, so very very good things to say about Keith and that time.
For sure. I didn't have this question written on the sheet, but I gotta ask it. What do you gotta
Please.
do to break a smile from Keith David?
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah. He Keith has a very dry sense of humor. So a lot of times I would see him like say stuff to kids and like make they'd be like, "Wait, what?" And then he would turn away and he'd be smiling. Um, I wish I had an answer, dude. It's hard. Even to this day, I don't know how to fully crack him. You just got to get him at the right place, right time. Um, but no, he definitely is stone cold but behind his bravado, he's like the nicest guy, and he's extremely knowledgeable. And I found like I actually, it's funny you say that because I always think about just his demeanor in matches. He's very, like I said, very calm, like doesn't show a lot of emotion. But I felt like when I was wrestling, like I grew to love that because something that I'm sure like when there's a break in the action in your match or whatever, you go over and your coach is like, hey, like freaking out. It kind of makes you like, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a lot of energy. So it's kind of nice to have like a calming presence in the corner. So, you know, in a way, I was kind of always like looking for that. I'm like, if Keith's calm, we're good. But if Keith was like kind of panicky a little bit, I'm like, dang, something's
You're
going
playing.
down. Something's bad.
So talk to me a little bit about not only your college career, obviously you were really good in high school too, but what do you think separated you as a wrestler?
It's a good question. I think, I, I feel like it's cliche, but I feel like my mindset in wrestling kind of separated me a little bit. Um, I think you could use that. You could think of that in two ways. Like I think my mindset, obviously, there's a lot of mindset in your matches and when you're wrestling, like how to handle nerves, handle the approach to your matches. Like I think there's that type of mindset, but I also think there's a mindset like when you're training too. And I think I was able to kind of use that and develop like just a really strong work ethic and um just be able to kind of push myself past what I kind of thought I was able to do. And I say that I hate to say like I worked harder than everyone else because at this level, everyone works hard. Everyone does the right stuff for the most part. Everyone works hard. So it's hard to say like I worked harder than everyone because there's dudes out there. I mean, everyone works hard, but I think truly like your mindset is what separates it. And I think um, over the years of my career, I've dealt with a lot of disappointments and a lot of you know, things that have altered my course of my career. And I think, with like I said, the support system of my family, having a good coach, I think I was able to bounce back from that and really just like basically every time I would have a low, I'd bounce back even stronger. And I think, a lot of it came through my faith. A lot of my strength came through that. And I think a lot of it just came through, not really putting a lot of emphasis on winning and, trying to be the best. A lot of my emphasis came on just like I wanted to be the best version of myself. And when I competed, I just wanted to compete as hard as I could. Like not I don't go in a match. I'm like, oh, I want to win. It's like I want to just wrestle my best. And if my best involves me losing, then it's like, how could you be? You'll be upset because you lost, but it's hard to be hard on yourself because you're like, I wrestled my best. There is no more. So it kind of like in a way makes it a little easier and a little less stressful. You're like, hey, if I just wrestle my best, whatever happens, happens. And I think that also in turns you having fun with it too. I tell a lot of like I said, I do camps and stuff and do some work at some clubs. And I always tell the younger guys, like a lot of people say, and then like I said, it's cliche, but if you have fun with it, man, it takes you to a new level. And I think it's easier said than done just to be like, oh, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna hit a headlock and do. I think there's a way to go about it, but I think if you could truly find that peace in yourself and find that freedom when you wrestle, I think instantly you'll notice a change in you know. So I definitely think kind of a long answer to a question, but I think my mindset I think helped me a lot, and I think that got me over a lot of humps in my matches.
Talk to me a little bit about your routine. What was it like when you were at your peak?
hmm yeah, so so like my senior year, for instance, I would we'd work out in the morning. Um, Typically we would work out like 3 days a week, wrestle like 3 or 4 days because we usually had off on Wednesdays. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, wrestle Friday. I try to get a lot of lifting in. I try to pride myself on being pretty strong. So I would lift almost every day, except for like the weekends. Like I would try to lift like 4 or 5 times a week consistently. Um, then I would do a lot of cardio. So after practices, I would always do like a form of cardio. So I thought that was also like important to my style. I tried to bring a lot of energy to my matches. So in order to do that, I had to have good gas tank. So I did a lot of that. Also ate very well. So I had I'm fortunate, well, my mom would meal prep me. So when I'd come home on the weekends, like a perk of being close to home, we'd go to the store, we'd buy steak, veggies, all the stuff, and we'd come home, we'd make meal preps for the week. I'd go down a pit, eat, so I was eating good. I was, like I said, lifting and um, doing cardio and all that pretty good. My routine was honestly pretty boring. Like I didn't go out, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. So lived a very like boring um, college career. But I kind of I wanted to be different, and I wanted to, I don't want to say like isolate myself, but I wanted to live in a bubble person in the sense that my entire life at that point revolved around being the best wrestler I could be. So I tried to not have a lot of distractions, and um, basically it was a lot of just training, eating good. Not to say like I didn't like play Xbox or anything like that, but I lived a very um, mellow life down at Pitt, and in a way, like I said, I think that comes back to my mindset because then I knew when I was competing that um, I did like I think one of the things that you look back on when it's stressful or you're in a match, you're like you revert back to your training. And if I was able to think back on my training, be like, I did everything I could do, I had no regrets or questions about my training, then your mind's, like I said, your mind's free. And you're like, well, I know my training's good. So that's just another factor and another like thing in your head that that you don't have to worry about. So and I knew that. So that's hence why it made it a little easier to live how I did. And because I knew, well, when the time matters, I'll trust my training. Um,
Right.
but yeah, so
Was there ever a time where it was really hard to stay consistent and stay, I don't want to say motivated, maybe motivated's not the right word, but like you said, you're living the right lifestyle and you're doing all the right things. Was there ever a time where that was hard?
oh yeah, 100%. Pretty much every day. It was hard. Especially when you would come off of like, let's say like a bad practice or even like a bad match. My senior year, I was fortunate. I was undefeated that year, but years prior to that, like you would lose. Um, and you try not to get down on yourself, but it's hard because you put a lot of time and energy and effort into what you're doing. So for you to fall short or, you kind of question, you're like, man, what's missing? Like, am I doing something? So you start to question a lot of what you're doing. And no, that's happened to me a lot. Specifically my junior year, I remember because I made the finals. Um, then my next year I came back and I made the round of 12. So I didn't even so like I went into that year thinking like, well, now I want to win. I just made the finals, I want to win. Then you go from that to not placing. You're like, man, what is going on? So that summer or that whatever that post that tournament, it was very rough. And I was like, man, I'm doing all this stuff. Like I said, I'm living the right life. Like why not me? And I see, everyone else having success and you're like, man, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And so that was very hard. Yeah, I think every wrestler goes through a little bit of that at some point, but um, it took a lot for me to bounce back and just kind of just stay consistent. I think I had a lot of people helping me at the time, a lot of family and um and I think looking back, I kind of felt like, well, if I just stay like I didn't really know what else to do. So I'm like, I might as well just do what I've always been doing. And that was just back to training because I didn't know any other way. So I'm like, it was almost like my coping mechanism. I'm like, I'll just keep working out. And then it kind of just became like, all right, whatever. And um, but no, I think it's very hard. I just think being consistent is the key and almost like just distract yourself with training and it kind of hopefully goes away.
Talk to me a little bit about maybe that pressure you had junior year after coming off being a national finalist. Did you feel any pressure coming back? And then if you did, how did you alleviate some of that pressure?
No, I definitely did. I think it's funny you say that because I think at the time when I was actively competing that year, I was like, I don't feel any pressure. I don't feel anything. But like looking back now, I'm like, you did, and I definitely felt pressure to be like I'll tell you what was going through my head. It was like, well, I made the finals, so the only thing you could do now is win. Otherwise, it's a disappointment, right? So I definitely was thinking that, and I started to wrestle in a way where I was wrestling not to lose, right? So I wasn't even wrestling to win. I just didn't want to lose. And of course I did. And I think, like I said, in the moment, it's funny because I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm like tired. I'm like tight. Like I just wasn't, you know, being myself. And I think obviously looking back, I'm like, I was wrestling not to lose instead of wrestling to win. You know what I'm saying? So um I think there was a lot of pressure and honestly I wish I could say I adjusted it mid-year and changed, but it took for me to actually go to the tournament and lose to realize like I gotta have a better mindset. And not that that year was like terrible by any means. Like I still wrestled well and like I had a lot of good wins and I fell short. And I always say like would I have changed like had I won the round of 12 match? Like if I would all American, would I have been like, oh no, see, I was good. So
Yeah.
I think it just took like a loss to be like, and not to jump all over the place, but I just think that's what I was talking about. Like your mindset comes in like, are you really wrestling like your best? Because there's times where you go into matches and you win, but you wrestled like crap and you know it. So I think it was like a lot of that. Like even if I would have placed that year or done a little better, I still wasn't wrestling myself. So I knew I had to make a change. And um, unfortunately, I lost. So it really was eye opening. And like I said, I was able to make an adjustment just to wrestle to win and just not to lose and just try, kind of stop putting so much emphasis on winning and losing and put more emphasis on just like wrestling free and having fun. And luckily, I was able to make that switch, and I definitely wrestled a lot better as my career went on. Um, but yeah.
What would you say that biggest mindset shift is? I know you said a little bit that you have a strong faith and that
hmm
that maybe played a part a little bit. What do you think like the mindset shift really was from that junior to senior year?
Yeah, I think it was a couple things. I think obviously it was wrestling to win, not wrestling because you don't want to lose. And I think that's like every wrestler's deep fear is like, "Oh, I don't want to lose. And I think that's like the crux of a lot of guys. They don't want to lose. Um, because of, what we do every day. It's a lot of work. So you're like, I want to be rewarded for what I'm doing because this kind of sucks. Um, I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's I think my a little bit of, you know, wrestling because I love the sport. And I think especially my senior year, because I was like, man, this is like the last go round. And I spent so much time doing this. And like I said, growing up, we like loved the sport. Like this was our vacation. I was like, man, I'm making this, I don't want to make this sport um like a something that I don't enjoy. Like this isn't like I shouldn't be nervous and feel this pressure. Like this is what I love doing this. Like I love going out in matches and wrestling and just have, like it's why we do it. So I think I like really emphasize that instead of being like, oh, it's a big match. Be like, this is a big match. This is fun. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of switched it into that. And then I think, through my faith, I was always, religious, and I was always close with God. But I think that year I got even closer, and I started I started implementing God into my career rather than um, having my wrestling world and then God out here. I kind of brought God to my world that was so deep with me, and I think a lot of what came from that was wrestling for Him and not for myself, and being like, I want to win, I want to do this, like I'm wrestling for God because he gave me the skills and the opportunities to do what I'm doing, and um, I think a lot of that. And then I think on a deeper level, what really calmed me was that, you know, I already won like the ultimate thing I could win, and that was God's love. So like I think I was like, well, how can I be upset about losing? It's like I already won the most important thing you can win, you know? So
Right.
I think it was a lot of like faith driven, and I think a lot of bringing faith to my wrestling, and then like I said, just being happy and being grateful for you being able to wrestle and just wrestling free and not worrying about winning or losing, just wrestling because you love it. Um,
For sure.
hopefully that made sense, but it makes sense in my head.
No, that makes
Sometimes,
sense. I just have to dig a
yeah.
little bit because yeah, I know obviously having an undefeated national champ season after going to round of 12, obviously we knew the talent and that was there. But I figured
Mhm,
there had to be some type of a mindset shift. And while I was watching some of your matches yesterday, I seen you point up in the air before you wrestled. So I figured
mhm.
you really had a close relationship with God. So I wanted to get into that a little bit more.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but to switch it up a little bit, Pitt and Penn State are maybe a little bit in-state rivals in that sense.
Mhm,
Obviously, Penn State is really, really good and super dominant. Um,
mhm.
what are your thoughts on, is there a chance another team can beat them this year?
Hmm. They're so good. It's hard to this year. I do think Ohio State has a really good team. I'm really looking forward to that, Dole.
Yeah.
I think, but here's the thing with Penn State though, is like like I feel like we've matched them up with teams like before, and we're like, oh, this will be like it'll be like on criteria, but then they always like find a way to like spread the gap. So I say that with a grain of salt, but I do think Ohio State can give them a good run for their money. Um, Dole wise, I think beginning of the year I was going to say Iowa, but obviously they handled them pretty good. I think Oklahoma State's very good. So Dole wise, it's tough. I think Ohio State probably has the best chance right now, just from I looking at the Pro Bowls and lineups and stuff. Seems like good matches. As far as like the tournament, I don't know. It's gonna be tough. I'm gonna think. I think there's a lot of new programs out there. Like not a lot, but like Oklahoma State, for instance. Like I think they're getting a lot of buzz, and I think they have a lot of talent and good coaching staff. So I think they in the future can be someone to be reckoned with. I also think Virginia Tech has a can have a crazy lineup coming up here with Bassett and Miller, and Caleb Henson comes back. So I think they can make a good run too. So I don't know. It's exciting, but honestly, dude, right now it's hard to see anyone beating them. They're so dominant, and I think they like. not to go back to what we were talking about, but I think they embody a lot of like what we were saying. Like they all wrestle so free, and they all seem to go in these big matches and just compete so loose, and I think that's part of why they're so good. But um, yeah, I don't know, but they're awesome.
Yeah, they are super dominant. But being an Ohio State fan and growing up in Ohio, I've done the same thing where I'm looking at the probables and the lineups, and I'm like, man, like maybe they got a shot this year.
I
But
know.
every year it's just like they find a way, especially at the
Mhm.
tournament. They get so many guys to the
Yeah.
final. Just so hard to beat them.
They almost like it's almost like they elevate when they get to the tournament.
Yeah.
And I just think they almost wrestled like above what we think. And you're like, man, like every year you're like, oh, I don't know. Then they like break a record. You're like, okay, like they're good. And I think it's, I don't want to speak for a lot of people, but I do think some people are almost like, oh, they win every year. Like it's like they have maybe like an issue with them winning every year and they're so dominant. But like I actually think it's not a bad thing. I think if you have such a dominant team and such a good um Dole and tournament team, it's almost like I don't know. I wouldn't look at it like it's a negative. I'm like you almost look at it as like a positive, like almost like a team you could look to and be like, all right, what are they doing and how can we elevate? You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like different teams when I don't know. I just feel like I have I've heard some people say like, it's just I'm sick of seeing them win every year. And I'm like, I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. Like it's kind of crazy that they're able to keep this run up. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. Kind of crazy.
No, I agree. I think it'll be interesting with, like you said, like Virginia Tech hopping in the mix, with Okie
Hmm.
State hopping in the mix.
Hmm.
Iowa obviously is always going to be a freaking solid team. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, no, I think there is still competition, but like the way they've pulled away and broke records every year is like, um, yeah, it's something that you can't really. But, as
Yeah,
far as
for sure.
last question here, if you could tell younger Nino Bonaccorsi one thing, what would it be? If it's wrestling related, if it's anything.
Hmm. That's a good question. I could tell younger Nino anything.
Yep.
Hmm. I'd probably say, um, I'd probably say slow down as much as you can and take in what you're doing. Just because looking back, growing up in my childhood and going to tournaments, that was like the best time of my life. And I feel like now it was like a blip. So I'd probably say enjoy the time that you're in, especially when you're younger, because life don't get much better than what you're at now. Like not, even like in college, like it's fun wrestling, but then you got school and like, like life just gets like progressively like more challenging and there's just more responsibility. So when you're young, dude, you got no responsibilities. You're just wrestling and, playing with your action figures. Like
Yeah.
slow down and take and enjoy that as much as you can. That's probably what I'd say. I'd do anything to go back and just do that
Yeah.
stuff again.
Yeah. Again, this isn't written on the sheet, but it's
Yeah.
funny you bring it up. I'm in my fifth year now, and I'm thinking about coming back next year for a sixth year. And I always kind of think of kind of what you were just saying right there, as far as
Mhm.
um, I got the rest of my life to work, and I know there's a lot of responsibilities that come with all that. And not that I'm not ready for that, but it's like, man, if I still got another opportunity to like wrestle and do it for another year, it's like, man, I should probably just do it because I know I'll regret it one day.
Yeah, I think I don't want to tell you what to do, dude, but I think if you have another year, just do it. Because it's like you said, your whole life you'll work and you'll be I don't want to say you'll regret it, but you got your whole life to work and this what you do and what you're gonna do and it's so special and like I always think back like a lot of people don't get to do what we do every day. A lot of people don't get to one go to college, but two compete in a sport that they love and like spend most of their day training for like a sport. Like that's very pretty rare.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we get like always caught up in like like what we actually do every day. Like, oh, this is part of my life, but like it's really not. Like not a lot of people get to be college athletes. Um, so I would just look at it from that perspective. Like I said, I'm not telling you what to do, but
Yeah,
I I had a lot of guys too, like who for like the COVID year, like they would have like another year. Um, and they'd be like on the fence. I'd be like, you're crazy if you don't take, like you have to. But um, no, I definitely would because it's one year goes fast, and when you're done, you'll be like, I'm glad I did that. Now I
yeah,
can work forever.
100%.
So
Well, I
I don't
appreciate you.
know.
This was an awesome episode, dude. I really appreciate you hopping on. It was awesome picking your mind with some of that stuff.
No problem, dude. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Of course, of course.